And we are live. Hey, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back today to Mystery and Thriller Neighbors best-selling author of The Chalk Man and so many other books, CJ Tudor, here to give us the inside scoop on her latest book, The Gathering. Kaz, welcome back to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about The Gathering.
Hello, thank you very much for having me back. The Gathering. Yeah, so I was just looking at myself there, the camera, as you do when you're on camera, going, my God, the lighting in my office is dreadful. I look like a vampire. I look positively ghoulish.
Yeah, that's what we're going for. That's what we're going for, Kaz.
So yes, The Gathering. I've got my copy here. I got shiny finished copy. Well, when I pitched this book to my agent, I remember saying to her, like, I want to write this book and I want to set it in Alaska. So it's going to be in Alaska and it's going to be in this small isolated town. And there's a murder and a plucky female detective and vampires. She's like, okay then. Which is, I mean, it's describing it to everybody now, trading off the back of, the success, that it's just basically True Detective with vampires.
Yes.
And who would want that? It's essentially, it is very different. It's set in a world where vampires have always existed. So they've always existed uneasily alongside humans, essentially. And because of fear and superstition, they have been hunted and killed by humans almost to extinction. So now there's only a few groups living in remote colonies in remote areas around the world. And they're actually protected. They're a protected species because there are so few of them left. Which means that, they can't be hunted or killed by humans, who think that they're evil. But there is an exception to that if, because as it stands, they don't really pose a threat to humans. They exist on animal blood. They have not been a threat to humans for a long time. But if they should, then there can be something authorized, which is a cull. That if a vampire colony poses a threat to humans, then, they can be culled. So with this backdrop, we have this small town called Dead Heart in Alaska, and there is a nearby vampire colony that lives in the mountains, and a small boy is found brutally murdered in the town. And this killing echoes one from 25 years ago, which was supposedly when another small boy was killed by a vampire. So into this comes Detective Barbara Atkins, an out-of-town detective, and she's been called in because she's a forensic vampire anthropologist, and it's her job to determine whether this boy has been killed by a vampire or whether there's something else going on, because if he has, then she can authorize a cull for the townspeople to basically get rid of the whole vampire colony. So obviously, though, it's not as straightforward as that. There is something else going on. This is a small town with lots of dark secrets stretching back centuries, essentially. There's a lot of mysteries. There's a lot of dark secrets that sort of happen. And we learn about the history of the vampires alongside the townsfolk in this town of Dead Heart. And of course, there's a snowstorm coming in, which makes them even more isolated. So no calls for help as these sort of two disparate kind of communities are kind of facing off, both wanting blood, essentially.
Ooh, well, I have so many questions, and I see questions are already coming in as well from our mystery and thriller family. So I can't wait to get to every single one. But first, I just want to let everyone know that we are aware that there is a solar eclipse today in 23 minutes. So we're going to end early so you can run out there and witness the solar eclipse magic. But we could not miss the chance to interview one of our favorite authors live from the UK and get the inside scoop on this vampire-rific book, which I posted yesterday was True Detective meets True Blood. So I was true.
Nice.
Oh my goodness. We have so much to talk about. Okay, so Renee is joining us live from Southeast Florida, and she wants to know, Kaz, why vampires? I want to know too. Have you always been a fan of vampires? What do you like about them? The fangs, the paleness? Like, tell us all the things.
Well, look, I've even got my Lost Boys t-shirt on. Yeah, I've always loved vampires. My favorite films and stories, Salem's Lot. I mean, I love The Lost Boys, one of my favorite films. Near Dark, Let the Right One In, 30 Days of Night. And vampires are just they're such a great monster. And there's just so many ways to interpret vampires. They're just such a long-standing, great sort of creature. And I'd always wanted to write a vampire book, but I knew, because they have been done to death, bad pun intended, that if I did write it, I had to kind of bring something fresh to the genre. It had to be a new perspective. I didn't want twinkly vampires or the whole kind of like, ha-ha, sort of creeping up vampires. They had to be something different. There had to be a different story to be told. So coming at it from the perspective that they're almost the ones that are persecuted in this book seemed quite an interesting take. And it enabled me to kind of look at lots of other things, like how we treat people that are other to us, how, we sort of, it enabled me to sort of look at lots of things in society while using kind of the vampire trope and genre to do it, essentially.
Ooh, okay. I love it. And you're getting so many laughing faces up at vampires have been done to death. I love very funny. Okay, so when the vampire, the body turns up, which eerily echoes the death from before, and this can allow the the rare existence of these creatures to be culled if necessary. Yeah. So I think we're all wondering how does one kill a vampire, because they're eternal, right? That's the problem.
Well, yeah, but again, I didn't want them to be supernatural in the book. I wanted them to be real. So basically, the vampires in The Gathering, they live much longer than humans. They can live hundreds of years. They have a much more extended lifespan, but they're mortal. They will eventually die, and you can kill them the old-fashioned way, stake through the heart, head off. But as my detective says at one point, that's going to kill a human. You lop someone's head off. It's good. So they're not immortal. They don't turn into bats or mist or anything like that. You can see them in mirrors. They are just a different species, essentially. So yeah, they are mortal, but they live for a very, very long time. And that's sort of the main difference. They have that, and they can survive things that perhaps humans wouldn't be able to survive. They can sort of perhaps regenerate more, but essentially, you can kill a vampire. They're not mortal. They are a different type of creature. Although, within my book, there are sort of arguments that go on between the different communities about that. The religious far right would like to see them as devils and spawns of Satan that should be exterminated. Where you have the liberals who want to see them protected, right. And these bash heads. And I didn't want to come down either side. I thought it was interesting to look at how we, again, it's an interesting way to sort of look at society, how we view again people who are different to us, and how we can become set in our kind of our camps and our groups. And again, it was another interesting way to look at that.
That is interesting because reading this book, it is, as you said, this familiar, political segue, sorting of, this is how we should handle it, this is how we should handle it. But we're talking in this particular case about vampires, which was sort of such a brain twizzle, because I had always thought of vampires as imaginary creatures, but here we are having is feeling very real.
They're real in this world, and it divides the populace, essentially, as another thing, these people in Dead Heart have had to live alongside these creatures, and they think that's they've hunted them in the past. They almost see them as animals to a degree, but there's also a great amount of fear, like living alongside things that could that they see as dangerous or a threat to their town and their children, etc. Right. As I say, it's easy to be liberal about the vampires when you haven't got them on your doorstep, type of thing. And right. So again, look at how we address lots of things in society, I think, and that was just really fun to do. But with vampires,
exactly, that is really fun to do. Robin says, "Hello, all." Hello to you, Robin. Thank you for joining us via Facebook. She says there is no eclipse happening here in North Idaho. Okay, yes, I have friends. I have friends that have flown all over. I have one friend that flew to Texas to watch it. I have another friend that flew to Dayton, Ohio to watch it. I have people that drove to Vermont to watch it. People are going all out here. Robin is adding that she is a big fan of true blood type vampires. Well, Robin, you are in the right place at the right time. Thank you so much for tuning in. And y'all, I just want to remind you, this book is not even out yet. Kaz, aka CJ, is joining us live from the UK to give us the inside scoop. And you can pre-order right now from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. And whether you're watching with us today on Facebook or YouTube, you can click and pre-order this link right here to get your vampire mitts, your vampire loving clause on The Gathering. So here is that link. Okay, Renee wants to know, how did you come up with this book's title? Yeah, give us the scoop on that, Kaz.
Well, yeah, it was a weird mix of things, actually. I wanted to write the vampire book. I had this idea, this kind of detective story set in Alaska, but with vampires involved, and it just was so tantalizing. It was it seemed like a great idea. And I wanted this sort of center of the book that basically the last big showdown between humans and vampires is kind of the battle for sort of people's souls. It's kind of like a myth, an urban legend that's spoken about in the book. And I kind of needed a name for that. And to be perfectly honest, I was listening to Frank Turner album, and there's a song on that called The Gathering, in a different way of talking about people gathering together. But I just thought, yeah, that would work really well with this idea of, I don't know, the gathering of souls. And then it became an idea in my head that it would be really good for the title of the book as well. And so that was kind of how it came about, really. I quite often listen to a song or something that would just spark an idea. And I thought that's perfect. That's kind of perfect for the book. And it kind of sat there as a kind of temporary title. But then I was like, no, I really like this title. Titles are so difficult, I think. A lot of authors will tell you that you either get a title straight away for a book, and that's it, that's the title, and you know it, or you can sit there for ages with editors and people going through loads and loads and loads of titles, and none of them are quite right. So, if you can get a title straight off that you're happy with, it's a much better way to do it. Because I kind of like to have a title in place when I write a book. It kind of grounds me. It kind of, I know I've got my title. It kind of just sets it all up for me. I don't like it if I'm not happy with the title or I haven't got the title of the book. For me, it kind of has to come quite close to the beginning.
Exactly. And I think it's so interesting. We love to hear the story of the title here on Mystery and Thriller Mavens, because sometimes, authors will tell us that their publisher came up with the title. That was the case for me. I had another title in mind for Broadway Butterfly, and then they came up with this, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually perfect and way better than what I had thought of it. So I think
titles are difficult. I know a lot of authors who's publisher will come up with a title, and I've had that once. So I think it was the second book, and actually had a different title in the US. And they sort of, because we've gone through so many to the point where you just go, I don't know anymore. And actually, it was a publisher's suggestion, which was my second book. But mostly the titles, all mine have been mine. If that makes sense. All my titles have come from me. And I think that's just because I like to have one right at the start.
Exactly. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that this one comes from a Frank Turner song. This is so fun. Kaz, I want to talk about some of the amazing praise that your book has gotten. And oh my goodness, the light is getting really weird here, which is very cool. It's light, so it feels appropriate that we're talking about vampires. But I wanted to talk about this this praise from Stuart Turton. He is, of course, the author of The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And he says, The Gathering is an incredibly exciting novel, tightly plotted and brilliant tense, with an atmosphere you could eat with a spoon. So, Kaz, first of all, congratulations on that rave review, and tell us about, as an author who has captivated so many readers from your many books, whether you've been a fan for since day one, or you're just joining us and Kaz is a new author to us. What have you learned along the way about writing a book with a tightly plotted, brilliant tense, and an atmosphere you could eat with a spoon?
Oh, bless Stu. Thank you, Stu, for that. I don't know if I've learned anything. I still kind of feel like I'm finding my way on it all. I never plot. So I just start off with, I have an idea, and then I just write and kind of see where it goes. And then, which means that kind of twists and turns and things kind of come to me as I go along. And, I very rarely know exactly the ending of a book till I'm getting quite close to it, because it tends to change quite a lot along the way. And it was the same with The Gathering. I had an idea of the ending. I very nearly changed it a few times partway through and changed various things. And it's often I'm juggling balls all in the air. I'm not quite, I don't quite decide sometimes about the ending until I'm quite a long way into the book. I have a tendency to completely change things. And then that involves rewriting half the book at the beginning. But I always think, if that keeps it fresh for me, it keeps it fresh for the reader, because readers are so good at guessing twists and turns, and you've got to be really, really clever with it, I think, these days, because we all, if you read a lot of crime fiction, then guessing the twists and turns gets easier. So I think if I'm not quite sure where it's going, then hopefully it keeps readers on their toes. And then I do a lot of editing. I kind of have that basic skeleton draft, and then to make sure it's tight and there aren't plot holes, which is, you know, every writer's nightmare. I do a lot of editing and rereading and fine tuning once I've got it sort of all down. But I like plotting. I do like it. I like that process of like, I don't know, going in there and unknotting things and being devious with it. You know, I have a little chuckle to myself. Ha ha ha! I never guess this. So there's a lot of fun to be had with it. Although sometimes I do just wander around in a bit of a daze, and my husband's like, "What?" I'm like, "I can't talk. I'm trying to unknot something in my head. I actually need to walk around and think about it."
Oh my God. You know how they have those
fun.
You know how they have those do not disturb door tags in hotels? We need one for you to wear around your neck. Where it says, do not disturb.
I'm plotting.
Writer at work. I love it. Elizabeth, welcome to the conversation, joining us from Facebook. She says, I read an early copy and loved this book
thank you
much. Thank you, Elizabeth. Let us know what resonated with you. Are you a longtime fan of Kaz's work? Is this your first book? What resonated with you? Because I know what I love, but I'm always so curious what others loved as well. And while she's typing, I want to look at this bit of praise from B.A. Paris, who's been on the show 3 times for her books, most recently. Just last month, Bernadette joined us, also from the UK. Let's take a peek at what she had to say. She said, my first vampire book, but it definitely won't be my last. Really enjoyed The Gathering, a chilling, claustrophobic story set in the snowy wilderness of Alaska. I think that claustrophobic sense is what creates suspense and keeps the pages flying. What do you think, Kaz? What keeps the pages flying for you?
Yeah. I think, you know, as sort of thriller writers, a small claustrophobic setting is ideal, really, because, you know, as a writer, you kind of want to make life difficult for your characters. So it can't be too easy to go and get help, to call someone, to get out of the situation. You want to trap them, essentially. You know, mobile phones are the bane of writers' lives. So any situation where you can have a bad signal, or they can lose the phone, or they're trapped and they can't get away is brilliant. And Alaska was a great setting for that. I mean, the town of Dead Heart's kind of the character of the book itself. And my husband and I did go to Alaska for a week and stop in a small place called Talkeetna, which was kind of a lot of the inspiration for the town, kind of mixed with some other parts of Alaska and old mining areas. But we felt we had to go there and kind of get a sense for the place and a feel for it, because I think if you're going to write about somewhere and you don't live there, you're not from there, you've got to go and kind of get your feet on the ground, because you can only do so much research online. And it's a wonderful setting. And being able to go and wander around and be there really sort of inspired me. There's lots of tiny details I was able to put in the book. But, you know, you can't get much more isolated than sort of a small town, you know, covered in snow in Alaska somewhere. It was a great setting, and it was just it was another character in the book. The town, you know, became another character. It was such an atmospheric setting, and again, I think it really helped having visited and being able to go to Alaska and get a sense of that wilderness and the quirkiness of sort of the small town as well. It was brilliant.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Randy's joining us from Indiana, having just watched The Eclipse over there. Leanne joining us from Facebook saying, I love CJ's books. A fellow Brit would like to know how to get future early copies of books, please. And yes, and she went, Renee wants to know, how much time did you spend in Alaska? A week, you said, right?
So we were there for a week, so it was quite a flying visit. But it was kind of enough to go and because we went to a place called Talkeetna, which is a very small town in Alaska. And we were there for, I think, 3 days in total. And we were staying just outside in this lodge, and the guy there drove us into the town, and he said, so, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to going to go climbing or take a plane here or that? And we were like, oh, we're just going to hang out and wander around the town. He was like, you don't know, it's only this one drag, one street, essentially. We were like, yeah, you know, because we just that was literally, we just wanted to soak it up and take photos and we went into Anchorage. Then we got the Alaskan Railroad across to Talkeetna, which was great as well. Spent a few days there and then got it back and flew back via Seattle. So it was kind of a flying visit, but it really helped just to cement this kind of town and the wilderness and all of it in my head. Just how the houses looked and the bars and the people and how people spoke and the food and it just, all of that just really helped.
I love that.
Go back.
All right, y'all. Here is the link. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, pre-order now. And we're gonna wrap it up early so that those on the East Coast can go run outside and catch the solar eclipse. Thank you for joining us to get the inside scoop on The Gathering by best-selling author CJ Tudor. CJ, Kaz, thank you so much for joining us live from the UK.
Thank you.
Congratulations on The Gathering, and we look forward to you coming back next year or whenever your next book is out to give us the inside scoop on Mystery and Thriller Ravens again.
Enjoy the eclipse, everyone.
Yay! All right, y'all. I'll be back tonight with Robert Degoni and Serafina Novaglass. I'll see you then.